And just to say thank you, a lot of Kenyans were registered when it happened, the mobile consular, so thank you.
You guys are a very mean crowd. Thank you. We'll try harder. It's now my pleasure to invite my boss, Ambassador Fancy Tall, our ambassador PR to the Permanent Mission of Kenya, to the United Nations office at Geneva, and to all other international organizations in Switzerland, and to the WTO, that's her full title, Ambassador Dr. Fancy Tall to make her remarks, and thereafter to invite our chief guest to make his remarks. I think you may also sit, or you choose. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, DPR. Your Excellency, the Prime Cabinet Secretary and CS Foreign and Diaspora Affairs, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, my sister Balozi Fauzia, the DPR, the mission staff, I know they are here, fellow Kenyans, good evening. I'm one happy soul this evening for one single reason, that I'm welcoming my fellow countrymen and women to their home far from home. Karibuni sana. We are very grateful that when we made an effort to organize this particular Baraza, you responded very fast and with a lot of excitement. I must disclose, Your Excellency, that there would have been many. That is for sure. It's just that the logistics and the space and the time could not allow us to organize a big one. But I must also disclose, Your Excellency, that the last time that we attempted to mention we wanted to have a get-together, you could hear from the lady that spoke that they were very excited and enthusiastic to be able to engage with us. So we are happy that we are making it happen. I must tell you, as your ambassador here in Geneva, that the instructions from government is just what we are doing, to engage with you. I must also disclose, Your Excellency, that we are working very hard as a mission to dispense on that particular mandate, because for sure you're valued as Kenyans. We appreciate the work you do, and we are proud of every single commitment that you have done out there to put and make our Kenya known and heard. Your Excellency, allow me also to just appreciate the fact that you've had to make time for us and for this particular engagement despite the very heavy schedule. As you may appreciate, we were dispensing with the mandate of the Human Rights Council, which is very heavy. And ordinarily, he would be very tired, but he's been gracious enough to accept to come and interact with the Kenyans today. So I really appreciate Your Excellency. Allow me, just before I invite Your Excellency, just to mention one thing. In my short stint since I reported here in September last year, I've had a privilege to interact with a number of eminent personalities, fellow ambassadors, senior leadership in different organizations here in Geneva. And I have always felt so excited and in equal measure very humbled by the feedback that I get when I mention that I am the Kenyan ambassador. And guess what? The real reason why I feel that way is because the response is always the Kenyans in international organizations are fantastic, wonderful individuals. I don't know how you're doing it. I'm told you're hardworking, you're go-getters, and you would have never slept on any file or engagement you've been given. And that is very satisfying. Remember, one of the things you also periodically ask us, which we will be happy to request our Excellency to address, is to support you in your different spaces in the organization. You already make our work easier because you've gone ahead and you've done our country proud. So it's really easy, and we really appreciate that from you. So, Your Excellency, before you are very diligent Kenyans that have made the Kenyan country really, really recognized, respected, and highly esteemed. So we're really blessed to have them here today. Allow me not to say too much, but to then dispense with my singular honor of inviting you to interact with them, Your Excellency. Karibu sana.
Okay. I'll stand. I'm used to this. When I wear the other hat. I don't know. Maybe I can use this? Oh, is it okay? It's okay? All right. Mabalozi wetu, hamjambo. Haya, ndugu na dada wa Kenya, hamjambo. Muko salama? Muko gangari? Well, okay, you're solid, you're firm. First of all, let me just thank you for sparing some time this evening so that we can interact. And I'll try and shorten my remarks so that maybe we can have the informal within the space that is allowed in terms of your time schedules. But really, thank you for being here this evening so that we can just talk briefly about certain issues. Now, I'm kind of constrained because if I try to say I'll deal with the issues, maybe I may not get very far. So what I'll suggest is that let me talk a little bit about the situation we are in and what I think on some issues and what we see. And then the specific issues, either I will pick up on a one-to-one or at least there'll be some formal indication of the areas that need special focus for us to be able to address. But let me start from the known and then I'll move to the unknown. The known is that we are proud of you when you take up these assignments, sometimes maybe with the help of the government and sometimes without the help, your own initiative. But the fact that you are where you are, we really appreciate and we thank you and we thank the Kenyans that have been able to secure assignments or engagements in all international entities, including those that are here in Switzerland. So, pongezi kwenu. The second thing is that we have just come out of a process in Addis. And we were all rooting for the Honorable Raila Odinga to get an opportunity to serve as the African Union chair, the Commission chair. But we didn't succeed. But nevertheless, I just want to assure you that it was not out of lack of effort from the Kenyan perspective. Other dynamics came into play, but I can assure you it was a very close race because it was basically 50-50, so to speak. And in fact, Kenya had the first round and the second round. And then as the rules of procedure evolved and people started dropping out, then we started seeing the adjustment. But one thing that was clear is that it was a very close race. And indeed, we have to acknowledge that Raila played out very well as a Democrat because while in Addis, the same evening, he decided to speak to this issue and acknowledge that the process is now complete. But because we were there not to create obstacles for the African continent, but to really participate in a process that is critical for the continent, he conceded defeat very graciously and spoke to it. And President Ruto also spoke to it in the hall because as the president of Kenya, he's the only one who's able to speak because it was a summit of heads of state. So they did speak, and today I think they've continued that conversation in Mombasa, for some of you who may have been watching, just to really convey to Kenyans that what has happened, happened, but Kenya must continue, and we must continue to work together. But I'll tell you a couple of things that we discovered. Apart from the dynamics out there, we discovered Kenyans are their own biggest enemies. I can tell you that what appeared as a very, very aggressive campaign and what have you were Kenyans externalizing their local politics and taking it out there. Basically, in simple language, trying to wash your dirty linen in public. This is the experience that we also were able to focus on. So, as we go forward, I just want to reiterate that one of the mandates of Ministry of Foreign Affairs is that if indeed there's an opportunity for a Kenyan, the way Raila had an opportunity, and there's another one, and there shall be another one, let's face the truth. Let us understand that the government of Kenya will always be prepared and available to give support so that that Kenyan can compete for that opportunity in whatever organization. So we want to maintain that principle, and so that as we go forward, it is not about local politics. It's about what is good for Kenya, what is possible for Kenya, and we shall always be available as a government to try and endeavor to do that. There are certain areas where we have succeeded. We have details, some of you may be aware, but not necessarily as the same profile. But in the past, even here in Geneva, we had Mokisa Kitui. We did succeed in some of that space. And there are few other areas that we can point out from time to time that we have had an opportunity to have. So you miss some and you get some. All right? But as Kenyans, we must continue to be solid and know that there's a time that this is a national agenda, and in the interest of the country, we push for it. From the foreign affairs perspective, now that I have said that, I also want to bring it to your notice, and hopefully the embassy can share this even through link or soft copy. We have gotten Kenya's foreign policy reviewed, but we've gone a notch higher. We have now converted it into a sessional paper, and it is before Parliament as we speak. And they have advertised for people for public participation, so that we can get an infusion of ideas that may not have been captured in the document. So I want to plead to you, and I want to appeal to you, to invite you, if you can pick up the link, so that your experience outside here and in the areas that you have, please look at the document and see if you can help us enrich it, so that it becomes not an executive foreign policy, but truly a foreign policy that is Kenyan and endorsed by Parliament in the form of a sessional paper. And that would then lead to the consequential amendments to the Foreign Service Act and the regulations that go with it. I was surprised myself that all these years, the 60 years that we've been there, we tend to deal with foreign policy issues on a specific item basis. But I couldn't find in the records of Parliament any moment where Kenya has tabled a sessional paper for people to know what our foreign policy is. Basically, foreign policy has been foreign to Kenyans. Okay, so we are dubbing it foreign policy machinani, so that we can try and get more people to understand what it is, what we stand for, what do we want to achieve, where are we going, and so forth. What are we refraining from? I'll tell you, when you look at it, you'll see there are so many things that have been hanging. And they have sometimes put us in a very, very embarrassing situation where Kenyan leaders go out. Maybe we are here in Geneva. Maybe some have come as a delegation of parliament. Another has come as an executive delegation. And on very fundamental issues, we have different opinions. And we contradict each other in public. Okay? And it's sometimes you want to blame them, but at the same time you realize, wait a minute, perhaps we have never come to some common understanding on what are the very fundamental issues that we should all unite on, and then we can differ on maybe matters of implementation or something in other areas. But that, I invite you to help us to crystallize on those issues. We have a few days, Parliament advertised, but the deadline is, I think, on 4th of March for any submissions to be made. And you can submit online to Parliament on this particular issue. We have good numbers showing for the economy at the moment. Inflation is fairly contained at about 3% of GDP, which is very good. Bearing in mind that we have climbed down from about 9.6% in the last couple of years to where we are. Our foreign exchange reserves are almost at 4.5 months cover, which is very, very good for us. The debt issue remains a challenge. We are not yet out of the woods. It remains a challenge. We have stabilized the exchange rate for now, and we hope we can keep it that way, depending on the circumstances. So these are some indicators which you people, I'm sure, are aware of, but help us to also explain what does it mean to the ordinary people from time to time. It is critical that with your knowledge you can help us communicate some of these things to our people. We value criticism. At least I do. But I also know that the President of Kenya, if there's anybody who gets a bashing literally on a daily basis, is the Kenyan President, beyond anybody's imagination. All right? Whether it is from the social media or whether it is the newspapers, you tell me, when did you last see what you might call a complimentary headline around him? You don't see it. But it's what our Constitution guarantees, people to express themselves. There's the freedom of speech. In fact, some of the challenges we've had with some of our neighbors is that they don't understand why, or some countries in the region, they don't understand why we have allowed people to come and speak their mind on Kenyan soil. But we tell them, you're complaining, but please just look at the headlines. And in accordance with our Constitution, we cannot gag people. We can't. And that is why Nairobi becomes the hub for all these big media houses, as you know, because it's the only place in the region that people can speak their mind. They don't spare us. They sometimes put us even in the wrong places, many years before we will get there. you know. But this is how they've been expressing themselves. But there are issues that we have to deal with, some human rights issues. There are issues that we will have to deal with in terms of how is the judiciary dealing with some of the cases. Government is not spared. It's not spared. The finance bill, we have had to struggle in court. We have had to cut back expenditure and so forth. So but because it's the rule of law that we want to build, we have to go through the motions. Now, this is that thing that Kenyans don't realize is literally under their nose. That it is an opportunity that Kenya can have so much freedom. So much of it. But we abuse it. Okay? It's enshrined in our constitution. The Bill of Rights is very strong. But we take it for granted. So I can only say that that is Kenya for you. We have to live in it. Hopefully, in due course, everything will be okay. But we have to now get alive to the challenges of possible artificial intelligence and so forth. These are things that we will have to do, but we do systematically. There are critical bills in Parliament. For instance, there's the conflict of interest bill that we hope Parliament can now deal with, so that it can help in stemming the issues of corruption, because we want to intensify that. We have an IMF program, for those of you who are in that sphere, which is coming to an end. And therefore Kenya is going to engage, starting from next month, with the IMF so that we can now negotiate for a new program. Because the one that we have been running on was negotiated by the other government, and we had to see it come to its logical conclusion. So now we will start negotiation for the next one. Okay? And we hope it goes well. Because those of you who are in this place, you know very well that all these indicators I was talking about, if you're not partnering with the IMF, you know the consequences. Okay? And those are the things that we need to speak to, even as we are here. It is not easy to walk away from the IMF. It takes quite a process. But you are worse off if you're not in partnership with them. You're worse off. So these are fundamentals that we have to work on. We cannot just assume that they don't exist. Our tax programs and what have you. We talk of the universal health care, very controversial in the process. But it's catching on. At least from where we sit, we can see systematically that the very intense criticism on matters of universal health care are declining in the mainstream media, which means slowly the systems are getting better. They're not yet 100%, but it's moving systematically. And you and I now know, was it a premonition, or was it good planning, or was it good for Kenya? Because let's now see what has happened. Let's just reflect on it. The USAID has gone. The PEPFAR is literally thrown out of the window. In Kenya, as most of you may know, We had about 1.3 million Kenyans on the support program, particularly, and I'll just give the segment of HIV and AIDS. I'll not talk about other aspects of diabetes or other complications that human beings suffer from time to time. But on HIV/AIDS alone, Kenya's program is in serious jeopardy because the government of Kenya, through the taxpayer, could handle just about 40% of the commitment. And we are relying on our partners to cover the remaining 60%. In some of the neighboring countries, it's even worse because they are 100% dependent on aid. So what is the moral lesson here? The position is that we now have to take care of the health programs for the Kenyan people. So were we a step ahead, or what happened? And those of you who are well exposed and you are in this room, we were in a state visit in Egypt the other day with the president, and I want to tell you that for me, Egypt's universal health care program is a mirror image of Kenya's universal health program. So, in fact, I started wondering, did we draw from them or did they draw from us? It's exactly the same. So, what do? We have to plan for it. Our savings were very poor. Those of you who are contributing to NSSF, it was crazy. Even me, when I was Minister for Finance, raising that figure to about 200 deduction was a nightmare. But let us be sincere and ask ourselves that even if you go with the old NSSF program, when you retire, some of the people's pension does not even add up to the 2,000 francs, Swiss francs we're talking about, under the old arrangement. Somebody would have spent all his lifetime working, and he can barely go away with a paycheck, with a pension check of 100,000 shillings, because you are saving at 200. So in terms of savings and GDP ratios that are known to be realistic for countries, Kenya was sitting very badly. Decisions have to be made. Do we continue with that, or do we start looking at things differently? And we all know matters of saving and what have you. When a country with the kind of demography that we have, if you're not careful, you land into very, very serious trouble if you don't program your savings appropriately. The actuaries in this room will know that. No. Now, if we move away from that, there's the housing. Ladies and gentlemen, our constitution again is very specific. Providing housing, and all this Bill of Rights and all this, providing housing is not optional. It is a constitutional requirement that the government of Kenya must provide affordable housing to its people. It's a constitutional requirement. But we were in the famous story of, we can see the cat coming, but the mice are asking, so who will bail the cat? So, unfortunately, or fortunately, we have been caught in that scenario where we are the ones who must bail the cat. That is making the tough decision about affordable housing and how we are going to fund it. But it has also been dragged in court for quite some time. It's now running, but there are still court challenges that keep on coming. Our county governments cannot afford on their own, and our population is such that it's no longer tenable to say that the Nairobi County will provide housing as Nairobi County. So we have to be innovative and look at different ways. And this is where the housing levy is moving. And as we criticize it, Kenya's model has now received accolades as a very promising housing model on the African continent. Now it's becoming a benchmark for other heads of state to come and visit and start seeing how we are organizing ourselves to fund this. So it's the painful decisions that we are making at this time. And they are not popular, my dear friends, my brothers and sisters. They are not popular. They are not. And that is why we are flogged and all this. But there's no gain without pain. So we have to receive the pain of flogging as a government now, but the intention is that we shall be able to chip in substantially in making sure that we go a long way in trying to achieve the constitutional requirement of affordable housing for the Kenyan people. We have challenges of femicide and so forth, gender-based violence, and we have laws that have been there. Maybe they're not effective enough. Recently, the government put in place a technical working group to have another conversation on this. That is where the Deputy Chief Justice is leading, former Deputy Chief Justice, and we hope they will help us through public participation and more incisive engagement to address this monster of gender-based violence that is hurting a lot of people, and give us good direction to have a well-structured onslaught against the vice. So this is something that comes up. Let me go back to agriculture. We are trying to have improve on food security while focusing more on production. We have to try and make sure inputs are affordable to farmers so that we are able to even if we don't have other things, let's make sure that our people can have food. This is a critical area. And all this and so many others. I don't know where to go on some of these things. But in all this, please look at the environment we are operating in. Globally, the conflicts and the issues elsewhere, the resurgence of the far rights in Europe and other places, everybody is beginning to look more inward, as opposed to the other approach. So we have to adjust, and we have to help our people to adjust, and to appreciate that there are changes. The regional conflicts are bearing on us quite heavily. We still remain host to about 750,000 refugees. in different parts of the country, but that's where we are. And as these conflicts rage in the region, don't be surprised if this number increases. And then it puts pressure on our health systems and in other areas. These are challenges. I've not run away from aspects that where we have had maybe excesses on matters of human rights. We're also saying that the IPOA should do what it has to do. There's a new chairman, the former chair of the IBC, the lawyer Isaac Hassan is now the new chair. We expect him to help us with the legal process. He's quite a seasoned lawyer. He can help in investigating and dealing with excesses within the system. We are just about to reconstitute the IBC. This has taken long. Even until recently, people were going to court to delay the constitution of the panel. So they have now, we've overcome that. They have advertised. People will be shortlisted. The last count I was told is that there were about 2,000 applications. So the panel will do its job. It will sieve. And I know we shall have our IBC way in advance. Our election is in 2027. So this year, within the next few months, we must complete the process. Then we have an IBC that can prepare for the election when it does come. We have in the process, for instance, also published a law. Again, you'll see the advertisement for, if you follow the parliamentary links. This is the assumption of office and transition of executive authority. Now, here, what we are trying to do is that we are, for the first time, again in the region, and we are doing it 2 years to the election, or 2.5 years to the election, so that we can have an orderly transition when an election has taken place. You all know what happened in the States the other time. But from Kenya's experience, there was no obligation for a minister to prepare any handing over notes for an incoming government. Nothing. We also had a situation where people rush, the scorched earth policy. When you know that you are exiting, they sign off very funny contracts within those last few things. So that basically saying, if I can't drink from the spring, then I poison it on my way out. So you have a situation where this process, and you could see there's a new government, but gazette notices are still coming out appointing people and bearing the signature of somebody who had. Basically, they were rushing to try and make sure certain things happen. PSS would go, and so we are trying to streamline that process so that you're not committing the government just because you can see the red light ahead of you. No, it's about time that we were orderly, organized, when there's a change of government. The law that we had used to deal just with the presidency, basically the ceremony alone. But we are now saying transition of executive authority does not end with the president. What about these other top officials? What are they doing? However, do we have sight of it? Are they signing a mega contract on their way out, so that by the time you go in, it's a fait accompli? So we are putting in some certain measures, and please, again, look at it, because these are some of the more progressive pieces of legislation that don't create enough sensation for some of the media players. They don't see that. They want to the scandal makes good news, but things like this may not be okay. But these are very, very serious and progressive pieces of legislation. We want to be able to put into law the whole principle of performance contracting. Believe you me, when Kibaki was there, Kenya won the accolades, the UN recognition, as the country with the most innovative and forward-looking public service, based on the performance contracting. But what is shocking is that since Kibaki and that time, we have never anchored performance contracting in law. And the United States Americans came and took our model. And Congress actually went and legislated on performance contracting in the U.S., on how they measure their public officers. And those of us who started it, that is Kenyans, up to this day, we have not done so. That's the question. It may look like madness, but maybe there was method in it. Basically, maybe it was deliberate. That certain people did not want accountability and did not want to be measured in terms of the performance that they put on the table. So ladies and gentlemen, there are some serious things that we need to move with. And some of these things you cannot explain on a platform, a political platform. It doesn't work. Yeah, because those of you, I don't know if there's anybody who has attempted politics here, but when you go there, the situation sometimes is such that people wanasema, si huyu jamaa malize haraka, tuonane nyuma ya tent, But the fundamental issues are missing. So we want to open up the economy in terms of the minerals and the new areas of the economy that we have not touched on. I could go on and on, but let me leave that for another day. But what is important is to say that we are conscious of how serious the challenge is. All we need is your help. And your help will come in two ways. Encouraging us on, and also giving us positive criticism. That is what we need. And we move away from falsehoods and sensationalism and all that. Give us our fair share of criticism so that we can correct ourselves. And at the same time, where we are doing well, let us encourage each other so that we can move well. And let us really be patriotic. Because Kenya is ours. Kenya is ours. We are in transition as a people, as a government. The reality is, it will come to an end. Every 5 years we must have an election. Every 10 years at the most, we have a new But one thing is clear. Since independence, literally, maybe there's only one neighbor with us, but literally, we have religiously held an election every 5 years. Even within the single party regime, the election was still held. I don't know whether you can speak the same for many other countries, if we are to be honest with ourselves. If you look at what we saw, I witnessed it. When you talk of transition, by the way, this law that I was talking about, we are making it very painful if you try to interfere with transition. Because a system, a public service can also be misused. And I can tell you that we experienced something where the government printer disappeared and he was not available to gazette the results of IEBC. That is how bad it was in the last election. So, what do you do when somebody who has a statutory obligation refuses to gazette who has won the election? How many lives are being put in danger? And that transition bill is supposed to make sure that we cure such attempts. So, as I conclude, I just want to say thank you for listening to me. As I said, I didn't want to go into the details here, but the granular aspects of the concerns, but we'll take them up. We have a Department of Diaspora, but key to it, you say you want a clinic with KRA and other entities, so that there can be a more structured conversation on the very specific issues. I will push for that, so that they can be made available. They can come here and you can have an engagement on that. But I can tell you we intend to resolve that. Finally, the good news also is that the President of the General Assembly came visiting in Nairobi the other day, and they are committed. They are going to spend about $360 million to convert Nairobi, Gigiri, into a center that can have up to 9,000 capacity for conferences, so that Nairobi will then be able to hold a General Assembly. So, in spite of all these things, there are also some good things. Yes, yes. UNEP, Nairobi it's their largest compound. We have given them 140 acres in Gigiri. Okay, so they are going to do that. And some of the criticism you are hearing that Karura is being taken again, ladies and gentlemen, what the government of Kenya was doing, those of you who have used that road, they were widening the road to Gigiri so that it becomes properly due and widened to allow this enhanced traffic that is going to emerge. But the message out there was that now Karura Forest is being what? Yes, it was again one of those famous things that we have now gotten used to. So to take your time to verify, but The good thing is that they want to make, there are about 3,000 former UN staff who have opted to retire in Nairobi. So we are now even looking at the act on, what is it? The fellow who will come here to talk to this will speak to Bitok and others. We also want to try and amend the law to make Nairobi the preferred retirement station. Oh yes, for those who have been in the international organizations, every other day in cabinet we have entities, international entities, who are either renewing or amending or even asking to have a host country agreement because they are relocating from other areas to come to Nairobi. So there are some positive wins that are taking place in your own country. It's not as bad as it looks. Yeah, the media can make it look, and they make all these complaints, but they still stay there. That's the irony of it all. They flog it, but they still stay there. They don't run away. That's the contradiction. Because if it was really that bad, you would feel it. Yeah, through my migration and all that. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to me. Asante sana, and I hope I have not overstepped. But what is important was to have this conversation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, PCS. That's what we normally call him. I think he deserves a better hand clap. Not because he's our boss only, but because, as you've noticed, no notes, speaking straight from heart, but speaking the truth. The good book tells us, seek and ye shall find. Ask and you shall be answered. You've already been answered before asking. But we'll have a Q&A session, sir, Your Excellency, because if you don't do that, we might be running foul. It might leave us with some problems here. We're going to get into a short Q&A session. I had already gotten some indications of one question that would be asked is, why are you here? What brings you here? So I said I'll ask that on their behalf. And then protocol dictates that we will, although the president of WISA had already started asking you questions as you are submitting. Questions? Hand up? Or comments? Keep them short. Bonakiro, you'll assist me with this, moving this. We'll start with, in order, if I remember. Gentleman here, name, where you come from, and the institution you represent, and ask your question. The shorter the better, so that we can have more people. We'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I call your number,
Your Excellency, Karibu Sana Geneva, and all protocol observed, and all Kenyans, Hamjambo. My name is Alan Lemantile. I'm here in Geneva, where I work with the WHO, but I'm not here in the official capacity, but I'm here as a Kenyan. So my question is about, I remember one time you were talking about Kenyans investing in terms of the PPP for Jomo Kenyatta. Under that, we find it like the Eurobond, the cap is very high. For example, it's $200,000 to invest in the Eurobond for Kenya. While in the States, the Treasury is $1,000. Anybody can invest in it. So I would like maybe the next Eurobond, if it can come lower to accommodate everybody, and all the diaspora, for example. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Your Excellency. My name is Chris Mburu, and I work for one of the UN agencies, the Human Rights Agency. I'm heading Africa work there. And this organization is actually one, to start from where you stopped, it's one of the organizations that's looking for a host country agreement with Kenya, because that is where I wanted to start to say that Kenya has a very, very big name internationally. And we are highly, highly respected. And there's always this thing I've worried about, because I've been around the world, not representing Kenya, but representing an international organization, the United Nations, of which Kenya is a member state, an important and respected member state. This incongruence between the fact that we have this big name at the Security Council and now the Human Rights Council, by the way, congratulations on being elected there. Kenya carries its weight, and Kenya gets listened to when it talks internationally. But there's an incongruence. And on the other hand, many people, many international employers will tell you if they had their first pick, they would get Kenyans. Kenyans' work ethic is highly valued, highly recognized. I have been working in Central Africa for many years. I just finished a stint as resident coordinator in the Republic of Congo. And people used to come to me, and before that I was in Rwanda, people used to come to me, businessmen, and they say, I wish I could just get a Kenyan to run my business. I know of a country that I shall not name in East Africa, in East African community, when it was time to hold an event that it could not fail in, they went quietly, recruiting Kenyans in every hotel, every transport business, everything to make that a success. That is how much we are valued. But this does not translate itself in Kenyans in high positions in these organizations. So there's something missing there. We are not pulling our weight. We have small countries who we have trained ourselves as Kenyans, but they know how to play the diplomacy. They have USGs whenever they want. They have people at very high positions whenever they want. So really, at the foreign policy level, I really think you need to engage with, like a select number of Kenyans in the international organizations and see how to cultivate that talent. One of the mistakes I can tell you that we make in Kenya, we wait until Kenyans have reached a certain stage and then we try to help them. Others start cultivating earlier. A P3 and a P4 should be on your radar screen. How are they developing? How can we help them in the future? But when you wait until the competition comes to the ASG level, you've already lost. So it's really, really important that we carry our weight. One last thing I'll say, and I'll say to the Kenyans as well, because I'm one of the Kenyan francophones, is that we need that French. You saw what happened in Addis. We were together, Your Excellency. But this is a problem that does not need a Band-Aid. This is a problem that needs to be healed in a long-term manner. Think about 20 years. Think about presenting another Raila in 20 years who will be able to speak to the heads of state in English, French, and maybe another language, Swahili, which is part of our. So again, this is something that we can look at, think outside the box, aggressively teach French so that we can compete at the international stage and especially in Africa where French is leading. Thank you.
As the mic goes to number 3, please, we don't have a lot of time. PCS has got 2 other engagements, I believe, before he closes his day. So let us extend back the grace. Keep them short and sweet so that we can have good answers. Thank you very much.
Mtaniruhusu nitumie lugha ya kitaifa. Manake sisi wote tumekongamana hapa kama Wakenya, na changamoto ambayo tulijipa Wakenya ambao wanaishi hapo ughaibuni hapa Uswizi, kwamba tujaribu kukuza lugha ya Kiswahili ili watoto wetu waweze kufuata huo mtindo. Karibu sana waziri wa mambo ya masuala ya nje, balozi wetu wawili, asanteni sana kwa kuandaa kongamano kama hii. Mimi si kulalama wala lolote, bali ni kuwapea kongole, manake tumeanza kuona mambo yakianza kwenda. Unajua mali kuna mama dada zetu wanafanya kazi haraka kuliko sisi wanaume. Wakati mwingine huduma zimeanza kuja karibu na sisi, tumekuwa tukilalama sana. Tunajua kwamba hapo mwanzo hizi ofisi mbili zilikuwa pamoja hapa, lakini kulingana na utendakazi ilibidi zigawanywe. La pili, ningependa kuomba kwamba mmezungumza sana, mkatupa kongole kama Wakenya, manake tunajituma na sisi ni wachapakazi. Mimi na hudumu OHCHR, na hata ndugu zetu wa Afrika wanakuangalia wanatuambia kwamba nyinyi wa Kenya bwana mtatuambia siri yenu. Kwa hivyo tunajivunia, na kwa hiyo tunaweza kuhakikishia kwamba hatuwezi tupa uzalendo wetu. Ingawaje kuna mambo mengi kule nyumbani, we are still proud of our country and we cannot give up on it. Kwa hiyo ningesema eneo bunge la ughaibuni imekuwa kubwa sana. Hapa Uswizi tuna changamoto wa kupiga kura. Tunajua lazima tupigie kura executive. Tunatumwa kule Berlin, ni mbali. Tunaomba mtupatie kituo cha kupiga kura moja ama mwili hapa Switzerland, ili tuweze pia kuzungumza kutokana na haki yetu ya kupiga kura. Ni hayo tu, asanteni.
Your Excellency, protocols observed. My name is Mokaya Gichana, and I have, I think, 2 questions and 1 comment. Number 1, how safe are we as Kenyans? Because based on the information reaching us, now Kenya is a host to rebel movements, which I remember during Moi time, it never used to happen, unless we were hosting Africans who were fighting against colonialism. And we were a neutral country, basically. Question number 2, under which law, international law, are we hosting those guys? Because now, clearly, we are enemies to the Sudanese. We are enemies to our friends, our families from DRC Congo, Sudan, and elsewhere. Number 3, that's a comment. I want to disagree with my brother there that we need French. We don't need French. French is a dying language. We need Swahili. And this is upon us. We need to rally as a country, as SADC, as Africans, to make Swahili as a 7th UN language. By us having Swahili, we already have a head start. Look at the countries which speak Swahili. Yeah? SADC implemented Swahili as an official language, and they are teaching Swahili in those countries. Southern Sudan also, and a few other countries. So, yes, those are my few words. Thank you so much.
So much as usual, you're given a finger, you take a hand. A lady needs to ask a question. Otherwise, the 2 ladies will not let me rest.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. All protocol observed. My name is Maureen Wanzala. I work at WMO, the World Meteorological Organization. So I thought I should just ask this question to represent the young generation as well, and the ladies. My first question is, I am a climate scientist, so I will use that as an analogy. In the backdrop of climate change deniers, you have just given us an overview of the international policy and how you are going to mashinani. How is the government helping the young people in terms of literacy, in terms of this international policy literacy? What people get, for example, the young people, is what they see on the news, what is displayed on social media, and the social media is a very good platform to sort of get this information out there. And what we will see on the social media, or what the young people will see the social media, because that's where they are most of the time, that's what will get into their heads. So how is the government helping to raise the young generation in terms of building this foundation, not only in international policy, international law, but helping them to build the literacy around that.
Thank you very much. Sir, over to you. Okay.
I think we'll do some Harambee here. Your Excellencies, fellow Kenyans, hamjambo. My question to you, Your Excellency, is on civic engagement. I would add to what my brother said over there, that we need those electoral clinics to help our young generations to be able to actually apply for those positions, to be part of the electoral process in the diaspora, as well as to be able to engage in our civic duties as diaspora as well as Kenyans. So what are the active measures do you, in your knowledge or your capacity, would you be able to help us to achieve this function in the diaspora?
Good evening, Your Excellency, and our dear ambassadors and fellow Kenyans. I have a comment, maybe it will also be a question. So in terms of JKIA and other ports of entry, I'm wondering how you are planning to improve the customer experience in terms of, because a lot of us, when we come, it's difficult, especially, sometimes it takes maybe around 1 hour to get through the customs and other entry procedures. So I think improving on customer experience can really be able to help to even increase the number of tourists that we get, because I know that's the aim of the government at the moment. And the other aspect also, I know you're doing a lot of things in terms of share and affordable housing, but I think at the bottom of it is in terms of income levels. So if there's a way that the government can push and improve the business environment so that the employment rates can go up, so that people can have income, so that they can be able to pay for the share and other statutory requirements that are required. I know you have a very long public service. I know from 1993 you've done a lot in terms of, I remember when you were the Minister for Finance, you were able to introduce, to remove price controls and things like forex exchange controls. So I think improving the business environment will be able to really put pesa kwa mfukoni ya watu, so that they can be able to meet their needs and also be able to support the government in whatever plans they are doing. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, maybe I'll start from the last one. I actually did not introduce price controls and exchange controls. I actually dismantled them. Yeah, I removed them because there are obstacles to business and so forth. So the idea was to liberalize the economy. And the issue of customer experience is important. We continue to tackle it. For instance, there's the ETA that is being introduced. And we've done it for 1 year. It started with teething problems, but it's getting better. But for whatever it is worth, earlier this year, the UK announced that it was now introducing the ETA. That means we were ahead of the UK. Okay? This year, South Africa has now announced that they're going to introduce the ETA. Ladies and gentlemen, you make serious moves, but you underrate your own potential. You're always ahead. So the ETA thing is now catching on with other countries. Imagine when I say you are even ahead of the UK, who are now starting to introduce the ETA. But in terms of the customer experience, the largest challenge we are facing is we've analyzed this and we are trying to improve the issues. We still need to invest more in equipment so that the issue of the customs and how they handle people that come in, we should be able to tackle that. Because in the last assessment meeting that we had, this came up quite strongly, and the complaint is largely around people's suitcases being opened and so forth. So we are trying to look at how, through equipment improvement, we can minimize that. But ladies and gentlemen, I came to Geneva, and at the airport, let me tell you the truth, I had to remove my belt. I had to put my jacket on the side, and it had to go through the process. Even me, as Prime Cabinet Secretary, I did it. I didn't argue, because it's a requirement. And I know it's a requirement here that they inspect your body. You hand over your passport, they look at you. Not Geneva, but at Amsterdam. Yeah, you go through the mill. And why do people go through the mill? So, as I say, we need equipment that will X-ray bags more and maybe develop more lines to help people. And that is the basis of what we are talking about, modernizing Jomo Kenyatta Airport, because it's long overdue. The method that was being used was wrong. And that is why it was stopped. But the need to move forward and modernize JKIA remains a must, and it has to be done urgently. You are travelers by nature, the nature of your job, and you will admit now that whether you went to Zanzibar or to Dar es Salaam or to Addis or to Kigali or you went to Accra or Dakar, all these airports are being modernized. We have to do it in Kenya. The difference is this. In Kenya, the scrutiny levels are higher. Lazima ufanye public participation. Lazima, kwa sababu katiba inasema ufanye nini? Public participation. So the gestation period and the process takes much longer. And there is also a lot of litigation that we go through. But to be honest, the earlier process had pitfalls, so we have to go back to the drawing board. But the necessity of improving the airport, we must. Therefore, we must package our investments, whether it's under PPP, because we can't use the exchequer. Things are bad from that perspective. The competing requirements and needs of Kenyans are that we have to find a different approach to fund some of the infrastructure that we have or that we require, including Jomo Kenyatta Airport. And that's why we are looking at the PPP angle, or even a joint venture. And that's where I was talking about the bond. If we package an infrastructure bond properly and engage with you based on the fact that the diaspora is giving us almost 4.3, 4. Now it's 4.9, the latest $1 billion on an annual basis as remittances. So if we package it well and we make it attractive, and it's in the right tranches or packages, then we can get more investment, which can help us develop some of the infrastructure. And that is where we are going, so that we can raise capital from different, make it attractive, what kind of tax arrangement do you have on those bonds and so forth, so that the return is better. I don't know what the interest rate is here if you put money in a bank here. Maybe it's what, 2%, 3%? Yeah? You can tell me, because I don't even know how much you have in the bank. So I'm only talking about the less than 1%, isn't it? Yeah. So you can see if we packaged it better, and you're earning maybe 5% or even up to 8% or something in such a bond, then it becomes okay. And if it is guaranteed that it has to be, we de-risk it in different ways, then it can become an attractive investment. And this is what we are trying to do, so that we can improve some of our infrastructure. So I was just bringing that to also answer part of the question that you had. I cannot argue more with Mburu. We were together. I'm one of the people who never took language seriously. That's why I can't speak French, but I had an opportunity to speak it from class 5. But I didn't see the value then. We were not being taught why it is important. But in the primary school I went to of Nairobi City Council, Nairobi Primary School, one of the lessons that we had when I was in class 5 was French. Yes, that far back. So we have some very serious work to do in getting people to appreciate the language. It's better now, realistically, but I think we need to really now show the importance of this, so that we can have our younger people correct what we were unable to do, and take advantage of those opportunities. I've had the issue about the voting. It's a function of resources at the end of the day. If our resources are enhanced and we are better off, we are likely to be able to open more polling stations. But that, remember, constitutionally, is for the IEBC to determine. I cannot. Because once the IEBC is allocated resources, or the resources are appropriated, then they can factor in how many other stations in the diaspora they can have to allow people to vote. So we cannot direct them, but we can help them through the budgetary process have the resources they require, but then they determine based on data and what have you, which other. So it is a progressive undertaking, but it makes sense. Are we safe? We are safe. By the way, in 1998, unfortunately, there was the bomb blast in Kenya. Not too long ago, we had attacks in Garissa. Okay? And we were having attacks in Garissa because terrorists struck. we had attacks in Kikambala at the coastline, okay? So what I'm trying to say is that, and by the way, if you go back in history, Norfolk Hotel was bombed. See? We also had the bus what do you call it? OTC was bombed. Westgate, Dusit was hit. So let us not mistake peace initiatives for that. I'm just trying to prove to you that it is not about the peace efforts that we see terrorists striking. Okay, they have different motives. They strike for different reasons. But we are safe, and Kenya keeps on working hard. That is why we worked so hard to work with Somalia. They didn't have governments at one time. But the factions were being brought together systematically until it evolved into a situation where the election is there, and now we have a government in Somalia. So it's peace building is a process. Okay? And we need to recognize that. So it's not about saying that we are against one faction or the other. Not too long ago, in fact, end of January, the third week of January, the Sudan foreign minister came from Port Sudan to Nairobi to have a conversation in Nairobi. Now, there are these other people who are having a conversation. When we talk about the Nairobi process, as an example, led by Uhuru Kenyatta as facilitator, the Nairobi process was about inter-Congolese dialogue, which means talking to M23 and others. That is what Nairobi process is all about. Okay? Talking to the different factions, M23 plus others, talking to them so that as Congolese, there can be inter-Congolese dialogue. And the Luanda process is dealing with the interstate dialogue. But these two processes are mutually reinforcing. So you have to talk to them. So clearly, if you go to the Sudan issue, you will find that Bashir created two generals, Burhan and Hemeti. Then things went sour. The civilians in Sudan wanted to change things. Then they were pushed aside by the generals. And then the generals eventually fell apart. And that is where Sudan is today. So these people must be brought together so that they can talk, and the carnage in Sudan can end. And therefore somebody must somewhere open channels of conversation. It's not about liking who or the other. Even the people that were talked to in the Somali issue, they're not there now, but it was a process. They started the process, they were phased out, some through natural attrition, and then others come in. If you go back, you'll find Mzee Jomo Kenyatta making the first steps on matters of Angola in the very early days, and then building it up to. So dialogue is the key. No military solution will solve this. So I hope I've responded adequately to this. We will continue to have this. We are hosting the South Sudan process, different factions, including those who are against Salva Kiir. That is the one you call the Tumaini process. Yeah? We are trying to bring out the holdout groups, the ones that do not agree with him. We are trying to get them onto the table so that they can agree, so that South Sudan can have peace. So this is the premise upon which, but we have no common border with Sudan. All right. So it's not anything that you can say we can engage directly. We have no common border. In the issue, in the aspect of DRC, the economic bloc of East African Community and SADC have met. They have agreed to a process. They have recommended it to the Peace and Security Council of the African Union. In the process of making it known to the Peace and Security Council, the Secretary General of the UN was present in the Peace and Security meeting. He knows what was adopted. So basically, it has received even the concurrence of the African Union and the UN Secretary General, that there has to be a collective effort to bring peace in DRC, which includes talking to the warring groups. By the way, Kenya's embassy was burnt in Kinshasa, and our fellow citizens had to be evacuated, and they're operating from a neighboring country. Okay, it's not easy. But I'll tell you for the first time that even when we talked to the government of DRC, they have never even they have not extended an apology to the people of Kenya. Okay, and if you see the clips, you can see that it was an aided activity. Because the people who are supposed to protect were there when these guys were going in and causing damage. So there are certain issues that we don't have to pick kelele huko nje. But it's sometimes they say he who seeks equity must also come with clean hands. So there are certain issues that you may not know, that we may not talk about in huko. You get what I mean? Huko mululu. I have to be very careful that we don't. I think the WMO, I think you have some very good points. If you can help us, especially on that foreign policy that I said, please share some of your ideas around here to see whether they have been appropriately captured or not, so that as the sessional paper is being completed, we can capture some of the areas about communicating the dissemination of this and what kind of platforms we can use. I think that would be helpful. Sijui kama nimekosea kitu kingine. To I get you. It's the threshold of it's something that one can look at, so that you can have more people participating in the okay. So it's a valid point that these are issues that we can look at, so that it becomes we might raise more money actually. And such, it opens up much more. The famous haba na haba hujaza kibaba. Yeah, so I hear you. Okay, I think let me end there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, PCS. I think he deserves a hearty clap. And Bwana Zefania Karibia. Zefania will give the vote of thanks. Then after that, we will direct you what to do next.
Asante. Your Excellency, PCS, Balozi Fausia, Balozi Dr. Tu. Thank you, PCS, on behalf of the Kenyans here. We want to say thank you to you. Thank you so much for having time to engage with us this evening. We have learned quite a lot, and we also appreciate PS Jogo's docket and what they do, and we expect to engage more on that. Balos too, you talked about Kenyans here flying the flag very high in the agencies that we work in, but we also want to give it to you, our diplomats, not only in Geneva, but globally. But we talk about Geneva and Switzerland. Asanteni sana. You make us very proud. Balozi, we engage with them quite a lot in even very difficult meetings, but we are happy to be Kenyans when we see Kenyans that represent us out here. So we are grateful. We appreciate the engagement and appreciate the commitment to continue speaking to each other as we go, as we develop into the country that we want to be, and appreciate the efforts being made by the government. And also the openness and availability to discuss. We wish you well as you're in Geneva, other engagements that you have. We pray that you achieve for Kenya what brought you to this mission. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been a long day, as I said, but we also can't just go empty-handed. The Africans that we are. There's some biting, sir, that you have graciously offered your visitors, your guests today. We will have it now, but we'll have it in this fashion. My colleague, Christine, you are here 1 second.